Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the America's Founding Series, part of the P.A.S. Report podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I'm glad you've joined me today. Make sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with other great Patriots out there, because this series is designed to highlight the forgotten Patriots who played an integral role in our founding, the people that made America great. It's meant to give credit to all those who have been forgotten, but it's also a reminder of why we are such an exceptional nation. And it's designed to increase the love and appreciation for America that's so lacking in today's day and age. We need to remember our past. We need to remember the Patriots that built this nation. And the forgotten Patriot I am focusing on today is quite remarkable. Yet few even know his name. Imagine, it's August 1776. You have Washington's army cornered on Long Island, where I'm from. The revolution is about to be crushed before it truly gets off its feet. And then under the cover of darkness, under the cover of fog, thousands of soldiers slip across the East River. And the man who made this all possible, he wasn't a famous general. He was a fisherman from Marblehead, Massachusetts, named John Glover. Twice in 1 year, Glover saved the Continental Army from destruction. Without him, there probably wouldn't be a United States today. Without Glover, Washington's army would have perished. It never would have had a chance to fight back. So why don't we know his name? And from a fisherman to patriot, John Glover was born in Salem, but raised in Marblehead, Massachusetts. And this was a town forged by the sea. This wasn't a community of powdered wigs and philosophical debates. It was a tough, rough, tumble place, practical, diverse. Marblehead was a seafaring community where men worked the docks. They pulled nets from the icy North Atlantic. They knew how to get their hands dirty. They would navigate the treacherous waters at a very young age. And Glover himself was a very successful merchant. He was a ship owner. But his true wealth wasn't in the ledger books. It was in the deep first-hand knowledge of the sea, a competence forged in storms and hard labor, waters that took so many lives. And Glover's character reflected his origins. He was someone that was disciplined. He was practical. He was a man of action, not words, not speeches. And when the push for independence began, he didn't decide to join a committee. He wasn't one that was going to raise his voice and speak out against the British. He wanted action. He wanted to do something about it. So he raised a regiment. He went straight to the heart of the matter. He mustered a unit of men drawn from his own town. We're talking fishermen, sailors, traders, immigrants, people that knew the ropes, that could handle a boat in any weather, people that knew how difficult life was. And this wasn't just any unit you think of. It was the Marblehead Regiment, the 14th Continental. And it was unique for its time because it was racially integrated. It was made up of seasoned professionals, a unit that wouldn't be defined by social standing, social tiers, but by skill, courage, and grit, something we wouldn't see again until after World War II. These were Americans in the truest sense of the word. They were America's first true amphibious force. At Bunker Hill, they weren't fighting on a hill. They were ferrying troops and supplies across the Charles River. They demonstrated that their skills were invaluable. And Washington quickly took note. He saw their value. The general had an army, but Glover gave him a navy and the skills necessary to command that navy. This is the enduring theme of Glover's story. Ordinary citizens using their specialized skills, everyday skills, in extraordinary life or death circumstances in order to gain our independence. And the miracle escape in August of 1776, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Washington and his forces trapped on Long Island after a crushing defeat by the British. The Americans are now pinned down, and they're against the East River. You have the Royal Navy controlling the waters. General Howe's 20,000 professional troops closing in, troops that were well-trained, well-armed, well-equipped. The atmosphere in the American camp was one of utter hopelessness. How are they going to get out of this situation? They were surrounded. They were exhausted. Morale was at rock bottom. A direct assault by the British was imminent. And that's it. Game over. If the British attacked, the Continental Army would have been annihilated. The revolution would end before the ink is dry on the Declaration of Independence. But Washington, he understood he needed a miracle, and a miracle he would get. Washington needed a silent, impossible escape. So he turns to the only man that could possibly do it, John Glover. And Glover's task was to ferry 9,000 soldiers, horses, and cannons, the entire surviving army, across the choppy East River to Manhattan, all under the nose of the British fleet. They had ships everywhere. Glover's Marbleheaders took command of every scow, every sailboat. This operation has to go on at night, but it makes it even more difficult. Every detail mattered. The oars have to be muffled because you don't want to alert the British of the splashing waters, so they're going to put rags around them. Orders have to be whispered. You can't yell and scream. You can't have any light. You have to extinguish any fires. The men, expert sailors, all of them, and they're going to move with silent and disciplined precision. And the drama comes. 11 p.m. A fierce northeast wind, strong tide. It made the crossing nearly impossible. The plan was about to be scrapped. But at around 2 a.m., the wind begins to die down, and the men begin to start rowing again. As dawn began to break, this is threatening to expose everything. You have the last handful of boats, but then a miraculous dense fog rolls off the sea. And that's why when people say manifest destiny, this is what they're talking about. A fog that wasn't predicted happened to shield us. It created this impenetrable curtain that held for hours, completely shielding the operation, making the British blind to what was happening. And you want to tell me that's not divine providence? The fog lasts until the last boat carrying Washington himself was safely across. Washington wanted to set an example. He wanted all his troops out before he himself left. And then the fog breaks, the sun rises, and the British awoke to an empty camp. They had been completely outwitted, saved not by generalship, but by seamanship. Without this escape, the American Revolution would have ended right there. John Glover displayed an unparalleled feat of skill and courage, but that's only half the story. Because when we get back from a quick commercial break, we'll explore how he was once again called upon to save the American Revolution and the Continental Army, this time on a frozen Christmas night that's ultimately going to help to secure our destiny. So everyone, hang tight, and we'll be right back. Are you ready to move easily and independently without pain and stiffness holding you back? Do you want to look in the mirror and see a hydrated glow instead of more fine lines and wrinkles? Well, discover Native Path Collagen, made with only type 1 and 3 collagen fibers. These are the two most important types that make up 90% of the collagen found in your cartilage, bones, skin, hair, nails, and gut. They provide maximum benefits. And Native Path Collagen is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners. Plus, it's third-party tested for heavy metals, ensuring purity and safety. Completely flavorless, Native Path Collagen can be added to anything: coffee, smoothies, oatmeal, you name it. It doesn't clump, it absorbs fast thanks to its peptide formula. And the best part, Native Path offers amazing bundle deals at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a brand you could trust. They offer an 800 number for any questions you may have, and then you'll speak to a real person who's there to help. Visit getnativepath.com/PAS and start your transformation today. That's getnativepath.com/PAS. Welcome back to the America's Founding Series, part of the P.A.S. Report podcast. Now, if you're finding the contents of this episode informative, I ask you to please share it with your family and friends. Also, take 30 seconds, write a good review on any podcast platform that allows it. Give the P.A.S. Report a 5-star rating, because we need to know the stories of our past. We need to know why America is such an exceptional nation. And one of those things that makes us so exceptional is the story of the crossing of the Delaware, December 1776. 4 months after the miracle escape from Long Island, you have the war still on life support. We're losing battle after battle. The outlook was grim. The Army had to retreat. And on this bitter cold night, soldiers, some barefoot, morale non-existent. Worst of all, many enlistments are about to expire on January 1st. The cause for independence was quickly collapsing, and Washington knew how high the stakes were. He knew he had to strike a desperate, daring blow to give the soldiers hope, to give people something to fight for, to reignite the American Revolution. And that blow was going to be the attack on the Hessians at Trenton. But first, they had to cross the ice-choked Delaware River. This was the ultimate test of competence and commitment. So Washington, again, is going to call upon the Marbleheads. And the river was terrifying. The landscape, freezing winds, sharp shifting ice flows, soldiers that weren't properly equipped, many absolutely freezing. The boats are heavy, flat-bottomed Durham boats. They're meant for cargo, not for military transportation, not for military maneuvers in a storm. Glover and his men fighting through the freezing rain, the sleet, the ice. They have to become human bulldozers. And they use their expertise in navigating coastal ice, skills that they learned from the harsh winters of New England. They understood how to steer the boats, how to clear the ice from the bows, how to jam the heavily loaded vessels through the floes, and their sheer determination made the crossing possible. It took 10 arduous, perilous hours. Imagine that. But thanks to Glover's regiment, the entire Army, including the essential artillery, was on the New Jersey side by 3 o'clock in the morning, ready for the march to Trenton. The victory at Trenton, this was followed quickly by the victory at Princeton. It completely changed the face of the revolution, reignited people's passion for the cause. It brought new enlistments, boosted morale, proved the American cause for liberty was far from lost, that maybe it was just the beginning, and it gave everyone hope that we could pull off what many believed to be impossible. And it was competence under pressure, a group of fishermen doing their job under impossible circumstances. That's what saved the American cause. That competency is something that's severely lacking today. But when we look at the legacy of John Glover and his men as a whole, you see a whole bunch of ordinary Americans served with distinction. And it wasn't just the Long Island escape or the crossing of the Delaware. It extends to the fighting at Saratoga, a victory that's going to help secure the critical French alliance. Now, eventually, the strain of war is going to take its toll on Glover. He's going to begin to suffer from poor health conditions, and he has to retire from the Continental Army in 1782, ultimately returning to Marblehead, not as a conquering general, but simply as Mr. Glover, the farmer, the merchant, the local politician. And he faded. He faded into relative obscurity. His name rarely mentioned in the celebrated histories of the war, his role largely ignored. But one man would never forget, ever, the essential role that Glover played in securing our independence, and that's George Washington. The commander-in-chief knew exactly how vital Glover was, and he wrote that the preservation of the Army at Long Island was due to the extraordinary enterprise of the Marblehead Regiment. Today, Glover is barely a footnote in history. We see the monuments to the great generals, to some of the politicians, but if you look at the facts, the fate of our nation twice rested on the strength of his arms, the skill of his men that he commanded, the vessels that they navigated through treacherous waters. So what is the lesson of John Glover for us today? Glover wasn't a general. He was not a politician. He was not a member of the elite establishment. He was a fisherman, an ordinary American whose competence, discipline, and commitment turned the tide of history, changed the course of the world. He didn't seek titles or glory. He just wanted to bring his best. He wanted to use the skills that God gave him, skills that he perfected on the seas, to help in the greatest crisis our nation had ever faced, to usher in this idea of liberty. The American Revolution was made possible by ordinary citizens like John Glover, stepping up with extraordinary resolve. Too often today, we're led by politicians and officials who don't have any skills. They don't have any competency. I mean, their primary skill is rhetoric and lies. Politicians who have proven themselves to be incompetent, when what we need most right now is competence. And I'm not just talking about the elected officials. I'm talking about the entire bureaucratic class as well. Many in the bureaucratic class who believe that their job is to rule over as opposed to serve the public like the public servants they are. John Glover shows us what happens when capable, committed people step into the breach and lead, not through ideology, but through integrity, through courage, through competency. And it wasn't empty titles, it wasn't soaring speeches that helped us win the revolution. It was a commitment to the profound belief in our natural rights, the concept of liberty. And the lesson for us today is clear. America doesn't exist because of a handful of people. America doesn't exist because of empty promises from politicians and bureaucrats. They aren't the ones that truly preserve our way of life. In fact, they chip away at it. It's you and I, the ordinary citizens, the ordinary people doing extraordinary things just as John Glover did nearly 250 years ago. That's what makes America great. In the icy fog of the East River, the frozen waters of the Delaware, the fate of the revolution hung by a thread, John Glover, the fisherman, no one remembers, held the thread steady. Twice he saved the Continental Army. Twice he saved the nation. And his story is the foundation of our strength. That's the real American story. America's strength has always rested in the hands of the capable, of the people, not the political elites. This is the American grit I talk about week in and week out. Now, if you found the content of this episode informative, share it with others. Make sure they know about John Glover. More importantly, make sure that they know their own worth in our society to this great country. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll be back next week with another great episode of the America's Founding Series, part of the P.A.S. Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at P.A.S. Report.